So it's Tuesday the 28th of April 2020 and I'd like to welcome you to a TILT webinar, that's Technology in Languages Teaching webinar with Vincent Everett called Creativity in Language Learning. So Vincent's a teacher and a writer as well, particularly he's been a member of ALL for 25 years, the Association for Language Learning. You can find him on Twitter. Joe Dale, everyone knows Joe Dale, he coordinates the talks, and thanks to him for sharing his expertise and his wide network of MFL Twitterati. If you're not on Twitter, you need to get on Twitter and you need to follow that group. Linguascope is very, very generous in supporting us in everything that we do, so we thank them. And we also always thank Heike Philp, who trained us really in how to use webinars. We'd really like to encourage you to join the Association for Language Learning. If you are a member, please could you write now in the chat so that we can see that and you can encourage people to join in. These events happen because people are giving freely of their time to be able to support it, and it's often because they are members of the Association for Language Learning. So as a branch, the London branch, we keep a record of all the webinars we've had, and we're up to about, I think, 42, something like that now. So if you look on this page here, you'll be able to see recordings of everything we've done so far. So finally, I'd like to pass over now straight away to Vincent. So the host and moderator for this session, I'm going to be looking after, probably just after the technology side, and Joe is going to be following the questions. As I've said again, this is free to participants, but we really, really hope that you will join the Association for Language Learning, and thank Linguascope as well. And I'd like to say again, thanks so much to the speakers, people like Vincent, and the organisers, people like Joe, who give so freely of their time to support the association. So I'm going to stop my share now, and it's over to Vincent.
Right. Have you stopped recording? No, you're still recording. Helen likes this to be slick.
I don't mind.
I think it's nice when it's a little bit informal and quite chatty. Okay, right. Does that mean you can now see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, right. Am I good to go?
You are.
Right. Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you, Joe, as well. Lovely to be here. A little bit about how this came about, because TILT is teaching, no, it's technology in language teaching, and it's a conference every year that is hosted at Helen's school, Ashcombe School in Kent, and run by Joe and Helen. It's free. It's part of their whole community ethos of Association for Language Learning, MFL Twitterati, everyone doing things for each other, supporting each other, which is great. And I've never been, and I've certainly never given a talk. So this is now, Helen had a cunning plan. Now that everything's online, that means that anything is now technology based. So they sneaked me in for a technology talk that isn't really. And then, because I've been at home doing things on technology, there will be some technology in the second half. Helen's very worried because she knows that I go too fast normally and I gabble and I move on to my next sentence before I finish the one before. So she's worried about questions. Joe, I think if there are questions, use them as a way of slowing me down. Okay, I know you're too polite to say you need to explain that better or you're going too fast again. Just ask me a question, make it more of a chat, and I like it like that anyway. So the first bit, creativity in teaching languages. I think we'll dive straight in. If I can make, there we go. This is Northgate High School Year 7 French exhibition that we hold every year. You can sort of see from the picture, it's a bit of a round room. It's in fact a local windmill that's been restored and opened as a community arts centre. And every February, March, we have it for our Year 7. Every pupil in Year 7 knows that when they start French, what they're learning is going to end up being on public display. Gives them a reason, gives them a purpose, gives them a bit of a kick up the behind to make sure that their work is good. We don't select the best ones. Everyone's work is on show. Members of the public pay to come and see their work. I'll show you a little bit about how this fits next with the language that we're teaching. So here's one closer. So they've done a bit of writing on the left in class, and then they've done a sketch picture in class, and they've gone home and done a beautiful painting. We can see a bit closer. So you can just about see, I think, can't you? So, dans mon tableau, il y a une mouche verte, noire et violet. So we've done il y a, we've done word order. So we've done, you say the thing first and then describe it. Only English is crazy enough to describe things and then say what the thing is. We've done gender. So you know that this word is stuck to this word, is stuck to this word because they're all feminine, and this holds the sentence together. You know that if it's a noun masquerading as an adjective like violet, then you won't make that agree. Derrière la mouche est un arc-en-ciel en spirale. À droite est une grenouille brune et verte. So they've done prepositions behind, on the right. We've done a bit of, as well as il y a, there's the fly is, or my picture has. So they worked on varying the language. Moved on to opinions. You can see j'aime le tableau parce que c'est joli et amusant. Je n'aime pas le tableau parce que, so they've got reasons as well, parce que c'est ennuyeux. J'aime le style et les couleurs. Now this will be better the other way around because he's gone with elle. So en général, j'adore l'image. Elle me fait pleurer et réfléchir. So you can see there all the things you do in year 7, I should think most people will do. There is, it has, maybe starting some opinions, but it's all pulling together for a purpose and looking to make it the best piece of writing possible, getting variety in there so it's not too repetitive. And down the bottom, il est un artiste qui habitait en Australie, il étudiait en Chine. Il travaillait en Russie et voyageait à Barcelone. Obviously, that's not true, but they can be a bit imaginative about themselves as an artist. And that's based on a model text. You can see now that it's taking fairly standard things for year 7 maybe, but it's making them into something you can put up and show the public. And the trick with the language of it as well is that to teach one child to write that, to describe their picture, fine, but you've got 200. And every child's picture is different, and you've got to have that flexibility, that creativity, that ability to express yourself. That means that each of those pupils is able to describe their picture, whatever it is they've chosen to put in it. Okay, here's another one, very nice. They really take a pride in it, and this creativity. So the creativity is there, obviously, in the picture, but it's also there then in the French, because once you've asked them to produce a picture and describe it, they've then got to have the French to be able to do it. Have a quick look. Il est un artiste qui habitait en Espagne. Il étudiait à Benidorm. Il est assez petit, with an E on the end that shouldn't be there. Il voyageait en Australie. Dans mon tableau, il y a une grande lune claire. So he also knows that some adjectives go in front of the noun, like grand and petit. Un soleil. On peut voir. So instead of just doing il y a all the time, he's now moved on to saying you can see a red, orange and yellow sunset and a black bird. And then he describes it a little bit. It is lively with interesting colours. I like the picture because it's calm and I like the atmosphere. So you can see the same sort of ingredients, but no two descriptions are the same because no two pictures are the same. I can look at this one all day. It's lovely. So they produce things they can be really proud of, both in the French and in the picture. And then you can see, there it is in the centrepiece of, and this is just one floor in the windmill. There are 4 floors of year 7 work. So right from the start, they know that their French is going to be for being creative, being communicative, and that step by step we will teach them how to do it. And that's kind of what this talk is about. It's about you challenge your students to be creative. What does that do? What does that mean for the language? I'll show you where you can find some of these. This is on one of the ALL wikis. Now, the one that's most famous is the literature one for some reason. And in fact, I always Google that because if you're Googling this, ALL isn't much help because that's just the word all. Wikidot is just the host. So they have lots of sites, and you put writing, you won't necessarily find it. So I do tend to Google ALL Wikidot literature, and from there navigate to the writing one or the speaking one, or there's a transition one as well. They're very good. So when you go to that site, there's lots of stuff. I find it best just to go straight to this bit that says, click here to see list of available French resources, or German or Spanish or other. And then there's a whole page of resources. I've just cut this little bit out from there. This one here says French writing artiste. That is the model text that I said a minute ago about the biography. So when he was saying, I used to study in Barcelona, I've travelled in Australia, that will show you those model texts. But hiding under here, where it says French writing with no heading, there are 2 or 3 things. Now I need to do a new share to show you this. This is where Helen likes it to be slick, and I think it's quite fun to watch the presenter working out what on earth to do. So new share, and I'm going to bring up a Word document and share. Can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, it's good. I thought I was talking to myself for a minute.
No problem. We just got a question from Karen, Vincent.
Oh, yeah.
Do you give the students freedom to draw or paint whatever they like?
Pretty much.
There we are.
We start with shapes and colours, and a lot of the material I can't actually share because it's got copyright pictures. So there are works of art that are entirely made of triangles, circles, spirals, and we do a lot of work on that with abstract art. So it starts quite simple when they come in year 7. Then they might have done colours in primary school. That's another reason we do this, to try and do something totally different from primary school. So it's not hello, how are you? So we do phonics, and then we'll do shapes and colours, adjectival agreement, word order, making sentences, and we'll move into this very quickly. So this is right. Did that answer the question?
Yes, that was lovely. Thank you.
Right, because it sort of sent me off, and then by the time I've finished, I've forgotten the question.
Just talking of questions, Bina has said, do you do the writing first or the drawing first?
In my class, I get them to do a tiny sketch, and then do the writing, and then it becomes a bit of a reading exercise because they've got to take that piece of writing home, read it very carefully to produce their finished artwork. Otherwise, you end up with an artwork that doesn't match the writing, and then they've got to redo the writing to match the artwork. So that's how I do it. Also, I find that making a tiny sketch is really good to make them actually burst that picture out of the frame. So I'm not an art teacher, but one thing that the art teacher have shown me, if you ask a year 7 to draw something, and there's 4 or 5 things, they draw them all separately. One over here, one over here, one. But what you need to actually have is make them draw it in a very small area, so everything overlaps, everything's behind or in a relationship with something else. You get a much better picture, and no white background. Everything has to be paint or whatever medium they're using. So this part of it, the materials are available for shapes and colours, because it moves so quickly into works of art that are actually copyright that we can't put on the internet. But this little writing frame here, so you can see this is the bit where they're saying j'aime l'image parce qu'elle est dramatique, je n'aime pas l'image parce qu'elle est choquante, je n'aime pas les couleurs, ça me rend triste, that sort of thing. And the English is here, and as usual with the writing frame, as we use it as a speaking frame, actually passing around more pictures, and they can talk about each one in turn. And the first thing you can do is obliterate the English, so you don't need it anymore. And then you try and do it as well without the writing frame or the speaking frame at all. So again, this might be another question as well. Some pupils will just learn to describe their picture. Other pupils, you might be able to give them a picture they've never seen before and say, talk about that. We had a split group this year, and we had a bit of a time crunch because they were doing one unit with me and their other unit with another teacher. I hadn't got them where they needed to be to get this up in time for the art exhibition. And they came in at lunchtime, and they were just trying to write French out of their head. In fact, I think the one that I showed you with the fly and the spiral, he wrote that in a lunchtime out of his head, and I came and found out that's all I expected you to do was find the one in your book and copy it up. But he'd internalised it. So there's a picture for them to describe, a few more words to go with it, some texts made up of this with some questions. Again, these could be model texts, a few more connectives in there, especially je préfère, a few more opinions, and then more pictures for them to talk about. And again, you encourage them to maybe colour them in, so they're actually talking about a slightly different picture to the one their partner's talking about because they've put some colour on it. And of course, they can talk about the colours as well. And there's the writing frame, but this time with less English. So it's not just about getting it, done and written up. You can do a lot of speaking in class about pictures as well. And the thing about the variety, so if one person says, in my picture, there is a yellow square and a blue triangle, the next person will bounce off that and have to say something different, like, you can see there is a big yellow triangle, and trying to do it in class like that. So it's not all writing. Right, so that resource is there if you want to use it on the ALL writing wiki. Right, I will now slickly, because everyone likes it like that, move back to my presentation. There you go, you see? You'll never know that happened. The trick of that is I didn't click on my link. I toggled to it in Zoom, which I've just worked out today. Right, so why are we doing all this? There's a thing with languages that if you do, for example, technology, you go home with a chocolate cake or some spaghetti bolognese or a bird table or a decorative thing you made to put on the desk or a pencil holder. When you do French, you go home with not a lot. And if you do, your parents can't read it, and you might not even be able to read it by the time you get home. So it can be quite a frustrating thing that you're learning French, but what do you actually take home? What do you take away? So we set out really to follow technology as our model for being creative, having tangible outcomes, and then equipping. And you can see, hopefully, from what I've shown you with the art exhibition, that we get better and better at equipping pupils to be more and more independent, more and more creative, to produce the French that goes with their artwork, especially if they've got a free hand to draw anything that they want. So dictionary skills come into it, word order, building sentences. So if the idea of creativity you think actually makes it more scary, I'm thinking sometimes, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but sometimes the learners we find it hardest to engage are really into technology subjects. So if we think of it, that creativity as actually practical creativity, this is from, I know when this is, because that was my car when it was new, which is why we've got that there. So this was 2011. This was 9 all boys, actually, who were not getting on well with their French teachers. And I had them after school for 3 weeks. It wasn't a detention. It was reorientating their opinion of French. And we did a lot with practical things. So the first week, 3 of them had this Lego model, 3 of them had this Meccano kit, and 3 had something else. I think it was a paper aeroplane. And they made it. And a lot of discussion came out of it. Paper aeroplane was great. It did something. It flew. But you could only make that one thing. You could go wrong if you mucked it up, but it wasn't particularly difficult. The Lego, they really liked. They liked the way you could put the bits together and make something you wanted. There were certain rules of how it had to go, otherwise the wheels wouldn't go round. The Meccano, they were surprisingly bad at. They appreciated that you could make anything. It was very flexible, but they found all the nuts and bolts very fiddly, which was great when we moved on to talking about French, because exactly those things came up. And what we did in that first session, after we'd done the messing about with the models, was we got these chunks of French, and in their teams, we did various things, making sentences out of chunks of French, putting them together, just like we'd done with the Lego model. And you can see it's partly spending some time with me after school doing some French, making some nice sentences, and it's partly rethinking your approach to French and how it works. Second week, again, the first half, they had these pictures, my car, the head teacher's car at the time, I've still got that, their teacher's been through about 15 cars, deputy head's car at the time, and what they did was they customised them, so they cut out pictures from a magazine, and again, it brought up all sorts of things about personalisation, making it look old-fashioned, making it look futuristic, which was good when we came to talk about tenses, things that severely compromise the structural integrity of the vehicle and how it's actually would all fall apart, which again was great when we came to talking about French. And then we did this, we did Pimp My French, which we're looking for a new name for. Someone on Twitter suggested Glow Up, which apparently is when you glow something up and make it more beautiful than it was. So they got a very basic text about, I think it's something here, you can probably see in it, it's something about I like to do. I can't even see it, they've changed it so much. And then they filled it full of fancy things like I was going to, and I decided to, and some weird vocab like grow a moustache. And I think we judged the pictures, and from that they could earn more interesting things to put in their piece of writing. So again, the idea of you making your French better, making your French more interesting, was then framed as a good thing, that you are in charge of customizing it. And then the last week we made this, which is a machine for making French. And again, you can find the blueprint for this on the ALL Grammar Wiki, if you would ever want to make such a thing. Kind of what I've replaced this with now is using, I'm sure you've seen people using Wheel of Names. If not, maybe we can put a link on for that afterwards. Wheel of Names, which is meant to spin, so you can pick a student's name for an activity in class, but we've been using it so you spin it to get a I like, and then you spin it again, and the next wheel you get to go swimming, and you spin it again. So it's that kind of mechanical building a sentence, making it very practical. So this machine has some wallpaper here. If you buy wallpaper backing paper rolls, they're quite cheap, so £1 for 3 or something, and then your tech department can just saw the whole thing into a thin strip, and you get a nice thin strip here, you can see like this on the right hand side here, and it just goes from one, you turn this handle and it moves. Now as it moves, there's this shape sorter. Joe, can you see my pointer on screen, or do I need to get a laser pointer up?
No, I can. It's absolutely fine. You're doing
Just
a
my
great
cursor.
job. We're all sitting here like it's like story time. We're all enjoying it. It's great.
Right, good. So this is a crane made of a straw with a piece of string and a clothes peg. So as the piece of paper travels under the shape sorter, you will grab one of these and put it in the right shape, and grab one of these at random and put it in the right shape. And you'll have all 4, and then you'll wind the handle on, and then you'll have the next one. So here, I was worried about this. It looks like there's only 3. It's because the connectives are in white to make them stand out. So you get a sentence like, I like to go swimming at the weekend, but, and then you wind the handle on, and you get your next shape sorter. I don't like to have to do my homework in my bedroom because, and then you wind it on and do your next chunk of, I prefer to go out with my girlfriend if I had one, okay? And they bringing it back to making French creative but practical, so they know what they're doing, they're making something, they've got the idea of putting something together, they've got the idea that to be more flexible, more creative, actually it gets more fiddly, and the idea that you can customize it and add to it, and that there's a process to it. It's not your teachers magically want you to be able to do French, and some pupils can, you don't know what they're doing and how. There's a step-by-step process. So this whole thing of creativity doesn't have to be scary. We ended up with quite a series of these projects. So the windmill art exhibition is something we still do. We don't still do all of these. So I'll show you each of these in turn, but you can see there's a bit of a progression. And this was sort of accidental because we put the projects in, but it wasn't accidental because we put them in an order that matched what the kids could do at the time. So perform something you've learned. We'll look at that in a minute. Use learned language, but in a real context. It's going to challenge you to use it for real. Draw on language from a previous context and apply it to a new one. That's a big one for creativity. That's where I think the Steve Smith's got a thing up at the moment on his website where he talks about PPP, presentation, practice, production, which is what I was taught when I did TEFL training. And yes, practice, great. But when you get to the production bit, so often you're asking them to produce what you've just presented, produce what you've just practiced. What needs to happen is that actually sticks onto the French that they've been acquiring. And so they're French. You might have heard me talk about a snowball of French getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The more you roll it around, the more French sticks to it. And that these creative tasks, the point of them is it asks them to draw on all the French they've ever learned. So it's not just what we did in today's lesson. It's not just what did we do in this unit. It is you have to have some French. And by me giving you this creative project, you have to draw on that repertoire of French because you're going to need it. Again, the metaphor of snow, you can't let it melt. Where are we? So perform something you've learned, use learned language in a real context, draw on language from a previous context, apply it to a new one, and then have a conscious core repertoire which you can use to deploy to express yourself. And then creativity, using language to entertain and enchant. We'll see if we can get there. So I can't show you any videos for this. I have great videos of the Franco-Vision Song Contest, but they're videos of children. I can't show them to you, but I need to maybe explain this. This was a very popular thing Rachel Hawkes came up with. They did Spanklo-Vision, we did Franco-Vision, where at the beginning of year 7, so it's another one for transition, every year 7 group learns off by heart a French pop song, and they're videoed, and those videos are then shown in assembly, and they're voted as a winner of the competition, and they get a special trophy. We used to do it so that the year 7s would vote it down from 8 till 4, the 8s and 9s in separate assembly would vote it down to the last 2, and then the year 10 and 11 would vote for the winner. And of course, the year 10 and 11, once it's been running a few years, had done that competition themselves when they were in year 7. So part of the idea of it with transition is that it gets the year 7s into the school. They're doing something that is for everybody. But for French, it's about French is for communication. You are learning this French. Something, it's not just going to be in a book. You are going to take part in a competition. You are going to do a song. And it's culture because it's a French song. But more than anything, you've got those pupils in your group, and you have got 6 weeks for them to learn this song off by heart. And it's not the only thing you're doing. You're doing phonics, and you're doing bonjour, and you're doing all the other stuff that you start the year with. But you find out in those 6 weeks how to get those pupils to learn. So lots of things that you do for memory, drilling and things in class, going home, things, dictionary skills with the words of the song, phonics. It ticks all the boxes. So we've not done this recently because we've got so many projects we have to juggle which ones we do, but it's really worth looking into. It was very popular. Lots of schools did do this because it makes sense and it's very useful. Learned language in a real context. This is another one we don't do anymore. It became a victim of its own success. These photos we're okay to record. These have been in the newspaper and things like that. So the French staff café. So in year 7 they do ordering food and drink in a cafe, but when you actually have to do it for real, then the creativity comes in of you having to respond. Now, you're not making up French on the spot. It's still, what would you like? Anything else? Are you being served? Sit here. Can I get you the bill? It's the same phrases they've learnt, but they've got to do it for real and respond and the logistics of the situation. What happened was, it was so popular with the staff that we had the whole school staff and the year 7s were run off their feet. So we're thinking of doing it again, but it will be by invitation. But that's a lovely thing to do, and it just brings that the French that you've learnt is being done for a reason and for a purpose and almost for an audience. I wouldn't say the staff were an audience because the staff have got to speak French as well. So actually puts the pupils in charge in a nice way. Draw on language from a previous context and apply it to a new one, which this is the important one. This is if we're looking at task-based learning, which again, like PPP, often they're put in contrast. PPP, presentation, practice, production, and task-based learning. I think what we've got a mixture of the two. So we do teach them the language through lots of drilling and lots of practice. And I'm not going to go into that tonight. I think if you want to, then if you're still left with questions like what language do we teach? How do we make that happen? How do you get the detail of that? I think you need to go to my talk for ALL Language World this year, which is on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and that will answer all those questions maybe of the working through from sentences to paragraphs, spontaneous speaking. But there's tasks. Giving the pupils the task is what pushes that so that they need to do it and it all works. So let me show you an example. This is Joe, do you know if you can still see the things on my screen that Helen could see before? Do I need to get rid of something?
We can, but I'm not sure why those are appearing, actually.
Right, it's gone. That's
yeah,
okay.
some of us can, but don't worry. Just keep going. It's fine.
It's gone. Right. It was hiding what I was trying to show you. So near us is a museum, county council museum, which has a farm. And round the farm is a stamper trail. So you go to the horses, and the children will stamp the horse stamp, which is sitting there next to the horses. Then you'll go to the pigs and you'll find the stamp and you'll go around and do the trail. What we have done is a French version of that. And you can see here, every pupil will have made their version. So this here is one pupil's work. So 200 pupils make one of these, and then the best one, or maybe a committee of the pupils who are judged to be the best, will make an actual stamper trail in French that visitors to the museum can then use. Either school groups, primary groups maybe, or we take our pupils as well so they can do their own trail, or just visitors to the museum. When they say, do you want the stamper trail? You can say, oh, have you got the French one, please? Now, what it does is in year 7, they have done describing people and shapes and colours, as we know from the art project. They've done food and drink, as we know from the staff café. They've done my house. And what this makes them do is apply it to the animals that are on the stamper trail. But, so here's colours. Here is what something eats. So a martin pêcheur is a kingfisher. Can't see the picture, I don't know why. Martin pêcheur mange, and here's the food they've been doing. Des poulets, mange des hamburgers, mange des poissons. So it's all the things that it eats. Now they did what I eat, what I have for breakfast. They did ordering food, but they didn't do what animals eat. So that's a nice one that pulls it together. We've done my house. So un renard habite dans la cuisine, dans la forêt, dans la rivière. So this is them pulling together everything from that year that they've done, talking about people, and they're expected to know it and to be able to handle it and to use it creatively. In fact, it's the wrong answers that are fun. So a fox lives in the forest isn't much fun, but a fox lives in the kitchen. That's where you can have fun with the answers. So again, we're looking at something for a real audience, for an external client who wants them to produce something in French of quality. Everyone's expected to produce something, and there's a real outcome, a real creative outcome. And it affects then what's going on with the language in terms of they've got to pull all this French together from the whole year and produce something. Everyone's got to produce something different. A conscious core repertoire which you can deploy to express yourself. So this is not writing stuff you can't say, or making sure you use the full variety. I know what this is. Every time someone comes into the waiting room, it pops up and brings the controls back on. So this is, for example, in year 8, we can't post our students to France, but what they can do is make a little flat Stanley of themselves or to represent them and post that to a partner school in France. And the pupils tend to write something in English that's very slangy and impossible to translate into French and utterly incomprehensible by probably the French pupils and even their teacher, and sometimes me. I don't know what it is they're saying. So they have to have that thing of, look, you've learned about how to talk about your town, how to talk about yourself, and how to talk about your school. You're going to use that French I've taught you to actually communicate with a French person. And I know a lot of the time we do, oh, just make something up, just show me a French, just make sure you use a can and a can't and a want to and a going to and a like and a prefer. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. Well, when they're writing to someone in France, it does matter that it's true. So they have to have that repertoire. Helen remembered something the other day that I'd more or less forgotten about, was we used to do green screen filming on a kind of drop-down day that was staffed by not languages teachers. And again, to make a movie in French, you've really got to go to, what can I say? Right, how can I make something out of that? How can I be creative and not run into things that you can't say? What's the last? Oh, language to entertain and enchant. So we get our year 9s to write storybooks in French for local primary schools. It works best when they can get a form out to the primary school saying, what sort of story would you like? Who would you like to be in it? What names would you like? And it works even better when we can squeeze it in time so that some of the students can get to the primary school and read them their stories, or do a PowerPoint and record the sound. So yeah, that's always very nice. And you'll have seen this if you've seen the talk that I did for AWL for Language World, or I think it's also in my Linguoscope webinar, so that's on their Vimeo page. If you haven't, and you're wondering how on earth do we get to this, then it does. Both of those talks will show you how to get from very simple things to something like this. But writing stories, this one's in Spanish. So I love to go to Norwich on the bus with my friends at the weekend because we can eat in McDonald's. If I go with my family, my mum doesn't like eating fast food, so we have to buy a sandwich in Marks and Spencer's. I prefer to go with my friends, although I have to pay with my own money. Last Saturday, I wanted to go to Norwich, but my dad said to me, if you're going to Norwich, you can't go to McDonald's because the food's not healthy. I said, but I've only got enough money for the bus. So we went to Norwich. I didn't want to tell my friends I couldn't eat in McDonald's, so we went to McDonald's. I was going to order a salad, but when I saw the hamburgers on the screen, I decided to order 2. I ate too much. I would have preferred to eat a healthy sandwich. So stories like that is what we're aiming for. And for GCSE, the thing of narration. And I'm not going to have time to go back over that because that'll be repeating the talk that I did for AWL at the conference in Manchester, but it is on YouTube. So if you like the look of this and you want to see how to take that apart and get there from scratch with pupils, then that's worth having a look. This was what we talked about at the time of the Linked Up project on this that we did with several schools and with a mentor, Mark Curtis, who was head of design technology at Northgate at the time, and then went on to John Lehman as head of curriculum. And he was very interested in this thing of deep learning and pupil engagement. It's very unfashionable now. Now people think that the pupils should be engaged. You shouldn't have to make them be engaged. Just tell them to get on with the work, which is great. I do that too. But this is looking at these tasks. So the task is big and authentic. It's not a fake task. It's something that's got a real outcome. There it is, clear and worthwhile outcomes. Depends on teamwork, unfashionable at the moment. Takes some time to complete. Yes, you can see the sort of projects I've been looking at. That's true. The project in itself is a real project and there's a process to it, and it's going to have planning and trialing and going wrong and evaluation and feedback and improving it. Involves some time out of school, yes, or beyond the classroom. Pupils love that. And it's evaluated and celebrated by an appropriate audience. And we did that with 3 or 4 schools. One of them was Broadland High School. And I'm going to now toggle to no, I'm not, it's on the next slide. So these pupils, there they are, they're having a lovely time. They've got the day out of school. The company that's filming this was run by the local ITV news lady, so they were all very starstruck. And it was actually for the Broads Authority to put on their website. So that thing that I was saying about, real outcomes. But I know for a fact they put the pupils in a room and said, write something about the Broads, and the teachers sort of more or less left them to it. Came back an hour later, they'd got the dictionaries out, they'd written either nothing or a load of gobbledygook. So it takes you back to this thing of these tasks. You've got to have that structure, that repertoire of language in place. So they went back and did it, made it, work from scratch. And you'll hear, if you know how I teach, this is, again, there's another school coming up with the same thing. There's a lot of I like, I can, you can, there is, connectives. Here we go.
Les mots sont plus populaires parce qu'il y a beaucoup qu'on peut voir, par exemple, des moulins à vent.
Il y a beaucoup à faire au Broads. Par exemple, on peut faire de la voile, louer un bateau à rames, faire des promenades, voir des moulins à vent, faire du vélo, aller à la pêche.
Il y a une variété de faune et de flore, par exemple des loutres, des cerfs, des poissons et des oiseaux.
Nous adorons habiter ici parce qu'il y a beaucoup à faire et à voir pour toute la famille.
Okay, so that's a real project, and it was the teacher rang up the chief executive of the Broads Authority and said, do you need anything in French? And they said, funny you should ask, we do. We need to have something on our website for French visitors. And then in terms of the language, it really needed to be thought through again. What can we ask these pupils to say? So this is the idea of a working kit of language. Don't have to agree with everything I'm going to say, okay? But I think you need enough language to be useful. Grammar does not work piecemeal. In fact, we know when we teach pupils one thing, they can do it. And then you teach them the next thing, they can do that. And then you do something that expects them to use both together or choose the right one, that's when it goes wrong. So right from the start, give them more. Give them a kit of more language that actually enables them to say things. Don't start with easy stuff. Start with what's most powerful. And then keep using it. Reuse that, recycle it in every single thing you do. And then progression isn't by learning more French, it's by using the French you've got better and with less support. And I'm going to move on to tech stuff in a minute and not go into the detail of the language behind this, which might disappoint some people, but don't be disappointed. Go and find on YouTube my talk from Language World 2020, where this is exactly what I talk through. Okay, I didn't want to repeat it. And if you know me at all, there's some people signed up for this actually that I used to teach. So they will know it's not the French that's hard, it's thinking up what to say. You don't need to learn more French, you need to get better at using it. You don't need to improve your level, you need to use the support less and less. And the comparison with technology, I really like it. Language and technology go together, it's what makes us human. I liked something the other day, Neil McGregor on the history of the world in 100 objects had a hand axe from 1.2 million years ago, early man, which is great because Helen calls me early man because I like to get to these webinars early and see the bit at the beginning where people are working out what the hair looks like and how to use Zoom. Anyway, apparently early man making a flint axe, the bits of your brain that fire when you are knapping flint is exactly the same as what happens when you talk and start talking. So I think language and technology do go together. And also the idea that with that hand axe, they made something more beautiful than was necessary. And the idea also that when you pick up that stone, you can see inside it something that isn't there yet. So the whole thing of technology, language, cognition, but it works because we are teaching the pupils the tools and skills to use the ingredients, and we want them to end up making something. Okay, so that's kind of the end of that part of the talk, and we're going to have a quick bit now on technology to keep Joe happy. 3 things: using Quicker for speaking activities, using Google Street View, and using Word for interactive activities. So in all 3 cases, it is using things for the purpose that they were not intended for, which is, my dad said 2 things to me. He said, there's never been a bald Everett. And he said, don't use a tool for something it's not designed for. But that's what I've been doing with these 3. So Quicker is designed for you to give feedback with a QR. It's Quick QR. It's an English company. He's a physics teacher, and he's put this out. And if you talk to him about what you need, he changes things and sorts it out for you. I've had to obscure this because actually there is a bit of a security issue that if someone gets hold of this QR code or this bit of the URL here, they could join in with my conversation later when I didn't want them to. Anyway, so this is what it's meant to be, is that I click record here, and then I will record feedback on a pupil's work, and then I'll stick this QR code on their work, and then they will scan it and they'll hear what I say about their work. Or I'll give them this link with this stuck on the end. That nearly always works. There is another way of doing it. But here it says start a quicker conversation, which is what I've been doing with my year 12s. And again, it's a small class. It wouldn't work with a bigger class, and people who use Flipgrid are probably shouting at their screens now going, why don't you use Flipgrid? Why don't you use Flipgrid? But what we've got here is, so I've sent out this audio. This is me talking about a Spanish play. These are some instructions. So what we've got here, this audio is recorded by the student who gets it. So they listen to me, and then they summarize what I said in English. And then I've asked them straight away after that to record, so they get their ideas straight, to record that again in Spanish. Then they've tried to transcribe it. And then this is, again, I've asked them to record themselves reading this aloud. And then I've asked them to put that to one side and not look at it and try and record, not word for word, but a full version of what I said, which is something I would do in class anyway. I would have either me or a pupil reading, and then other pupils trying to bounce back instantly a summary version of what they said, a summary version of what they said in the target language, and then listening again and trying to echo it back. This one as well. So this is, again, the first one is me reading a short paragraph, a short text. These are the instructions. So I recorded that, did the instructions, then I sent the relevant QR code or URL to the student. As soon as I need a login, I need a login, but the students don't. And then this is the student, they listen to me, and then they record themselves saying as much as they can remember, which is quite a short bit to start off with. Then they can listen again, and they try and record a little bit more. And then they listen again, and they try and retain a bit more, and they say a bit more each time until at the end, they're saying the full text, okay? So that's quicker, being used for what it's not meant to be. Google Street View, okay. So Google Street View is there in Google Maps. Some of you might have seen this. Now, I know how long this video lasts, so I'm just going to push play. Helen's going to be upset because she doesn't like it when people accidentally show the non-presentation version of a PowerPoint. But that's not what this is. This is actually a video of a PowerPoint, and I've done it on purpose. So hopefully you can hear the audio. Here we go. Okay, so this bit I pre-recorded as a video. This isn't actually me talking to you live. This is something I recorded this morning. In PowerPoint, I know lots of people use Loom for screen recording and tutorials. I've just gone to Insert and then Screen Recording, and then whatever happens on this screen, I mean, you can set it to different sizes, the area that's recorded, but I'm recording the whole screen pretty much. So I'm going to just do a different version of the tutorial for the Street View mystery. So I know lots of you have seen the tutorial for the Street View mystery already, so I'm going to give you a bit of an extra special tour. It's a Street View mystery in French, so pupils have this resource in front of them, either printed out as 24 pages, or like I'm doing as a split screen, using Windows key and then the arrow key to nicely split your screen. And they will meet a series of people. I'm going to skip through all this because you can watch the tutorial on YouTube. But here we go. So when you arrive in town, you find yourself here. And your first person to talk to is un homme assez vieux qui porte un pantalon gris, une chemise bleue, il a les cheveux gris. And then you have this conversation with him. And there he is. You can click here to bring up the sound, which I've got here. Either that or scan on your phone this QR code will bring up the audio. So if you click here, you'll hear me basically, or someone else, other contributors, saying this. The questions underneath are very much there to help you understand. So what is his name? Je suis Henri. There you are. What is behind you? Regardez derrière vous, il y a un pot de fleurs énorme. Okay, so on the one on YouTube, I didn't spoil it for you. I didn't turn around and see the big pot of flowers. But when you do this in class, I know from the previous Street View mysteries, there's a gasp out loud moment. Sometimes pupils even scream when you turn around and you suddenly see something like an enormous pot of flowers for no apparent reason, just sitting there. Okay, so there are some strange things going on in this town. So here's your first chap, and you'll talk to him. And then you'll carry on down the street as directed, either by him or here in the document. And you'll find more things to look at, which I'll skip past. Another lady to talk to. So at this point, there she is. You can zoom in. You can say hello. Have a good look in the shop window. And then there would be the next conversation. So you would click here to bring up the audio, or scan it with the QR code, have a conversation with her. And then you would carry on down the road looking for the next person to talk to and pick up a picture of the mystery and build up some clues. I'll show you a few things to tempt you to carry on further. This isn't in the Street View tutorial on YouTube because I don't want to spoil it for students in advance, but I'll show you a few things. There's this rather interesting cat food just left there behind the grill, and as one of the characters is a cat, that's quite interesting. Sorry. There's this interesting shop with a window full of quite interesting things, and this motorbike, this scooter here, that when you carry on as you've been told to in the conversation by the people outside the shop, or just by the document, when you carry on this way, if you do turn round, that scooter's disappeared, and they might catch up with you again later. Lots of strange things like that. You come to this point, and there's no one in the street. There's a nice balcony with some plants on. We've already seen an enormous pot of plants, haven't we? Go around the corner. There's no one there. So we'll come. Oh, there's a lady to talk to, so we'll come back here. And we talk to this nice lady here. But one of the things that she does say is something's happened to her plants on the balcony. We carry on up this road. Get to the end. Again, all the instructions on where to go are either in the conversation you have or given to you. And there's little checkpoints here, so you can end up at the right place. But just look left. There's the scooter, which strangely, when you carry on, will have disappeared. I don't want to spoil too much for you. What have we got here? There's this bizarre situation. We've already seen an enormous pot of plants. We've seen, this. Something very odd happened here. What else? Let's have a look. A naked man you'll get to talk to there in his window. We'll zoom in, not too close obviously, and opposite him he'll point you to this balcony where the plants are all dead, and he'll direct you to carry on up this road, and we can already see there's this building here that's been destroyed completely by the plants on the inside of it. Street seems empty as we go up here. There is a lady to talk to, and she will tell you to turn around and talk to, this is one of our characters, this cat who's appeared out of nowhere. And then we have this street that protects itself with the umbrellas. So plenty there to get your teeth into with this mystery, remembering to talk to each person, click on the audio, and at the end you get to write up what you think has been going on, either in French or in English. Okay, so I will now go to the top of my screen and work out how to stop this recording. Okay, I don't know if you could hear the audio on that. Anyway. Right,
yeah, it was fine, Vincent. It's fantastic.
Oh, good.
Very clearly, yeah.
That's quite fun. That's quite fun, the Street View mystery. I'll show you where to find it all later, or in a minute. One last thing, using Word for more interactive activities. Now, I'm not to click on that. I go up here. Where's my thing? Joe, where's my thing gone? Oh, I need to do escape. Right. And I'm going to do new share, which I don't know if you can see that or not. And I'm going to find the other Word document that looks like this. And I'll do share. There you go, you see. So this is something I have in the computer room for pupils to do, but I've also been setting it for remote learning, bearing in mind not all pupils have Word. So I also do it as a PDF, but then they can't do the interactive. So this says drag all the opinion words onto the square. And obviously, je préfère will go fine. There we are. But if I get jouer au tennis, which isn't really an opinion, I've set it so that it's behind the square and it doesn't appear. Okay, so it's a kind of it's self-correcting. J'adore will appear, but avec mes amis will disappear, which they quite like. And all it is some of these are in front of the text, in front of the box, and some are behind. It's the sort of thing I did years ago. Then we got lots of fancy technology and forgot all about it. So again, here you've got with. So if I get the right answer, there's a little
Vincent, I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but we're just basically seeing a big blue screen at the moment. I think maybe it's zoomed in to something on the screen for some reason.
Well, that's not what I'm seeing. So I'm going to do stop share. I'm going to do share screen, and I'm going to go. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. What can you see?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so do you want me to go back a page? Did you get the thing?
Yeah, maybe, if that's possible.
Okay, sorry, yeah. So what I was just showing you here,
that's great, thank you,
is that if it says drag all the opinion words onto this nice blue square, which might be what you saw. So je préfère goes fine. If you get par exemple, disappears. So it's fun for the students to do. They can't really go wrong, even if they drag everything. And they quite like it, and they end up with the right answer. And then this one, similarly, just using little tricks that students for some reason can't work out how to do it. So for I love, if you choose j'adore, it's got a little white smiley face that was there all the time. You just couldn't see it against the white background. And one last thing, again, this is designed so that it can't go wrong. So this, you've got the English and the French mixed up. So you get j'adore, you're going to drag the French here, j'adore, get the next bit of French, aller au cinéma, and to get the next bit of French. And as you do that, the English paragraph is also writing itself. I love to go to the cinema, especially if I can. So this is something that we set that it almost can't go wrong unless they do something really silly. And all the words in here, they've got the French and the English, and they'll need it again in a minute to do the translations. Okay, right, let me go back to my presentation. New share. There we go, share. Right, so that's just 3 things I wanted to show you that are working remotely at the moment, using Quicker for conversations when I can't get in to talk to my Year 12s. Street View, which is something quite different, quite special. You might want to save that till you get back to school so you can help them if they don't, so not to get lost or to stick at it. And using Word in different ways for interactive activities. And these are on my TES shop. They're there for free, and then you can modify them for your own. Okay, so that's me just after 9 o'clock. So here are some of the links. We've seen the ALL wikis. Rather than give you a link to my test shop, just Google V. Everett French Spanish TES shop. And the same for YouTube. You wouldn't remember a link, but just Google V. Everett MFL YouTube and find that talk from the conference that goes into detail on sentences and longer stories. That's me on Twitter, at V. Everett MFL. And then the Association for Language Learning, please join. Right, that's me. Joe, if you'd like to fire some questions at me.
Well, look, I would like to fire some questions at you, Vincent, but I think we've answered all the questions that have been in the chat. So I had my Google Doc all ready, but I think, as I said earlier, I think everyone was sitting down and enjoying story time. I think it was absolutely fantastic. If anyone has any questions right now, feel free to put it in the chat. But I think, unless I missed them, I don't think there were any questions. Well, if there were some, but some people answered them there and then. Or I asked a couple of them there and then, but
okay.
That was brilliant, Vincent, as always, absolutely brilliant.
What about the links, Joe? Will you be able to put those with the video online, or have some other way of getting the links to people?
So Helen very kindly writes up the sort of like the links afterwards, don't you, Helen? Do you want to say something about that?
Yes, if I just say that what happens is we've got a page, and in a moment I can put the link to the page, which is not yet live. I've learned how to do this. I've learned to do an unlive page. And as soon as Joe has uploaded the video, I then put a recording on this page. And on that page, you will have Vincent's lovely face with the logo. You'll have the link to the recording. You'll have anything that Vincent gives us. So as Vincent knows, that's what I do, isn't it? I've got a page already dedicated to Vincent from years ago. So, but this will be a new page. Okay. So, I mean, can we just say thank you ever so much now? And perhaps if everybody could open up their videos, that would be great to sit down to the questions. I love to be able to see everybody and then take a picture, and we'll put this picture on the website as well. That's good. Right,
okay, so let's just go well, one of the questions was, how long did it take you to do the Street View, to prepare it?
I did it in the Easter holidays. It took me 2 days.
Okay.
So it was nice actually to have time for once to do something that takes a bit of time, because normally you're doing 16 things at once, and anything that takes more than time than it should, you just go doing that. So actually to think, do you know, I've got time to do something that takes a bit of time, and it might be good, it might not be good, but I'm just going to enjoy doing it. So
that's fantastic. So if you were advising someone who wanted to replicate the same idea, how would you plan it out? What would you suggest would be the steps?
I would start by getting to know Google Tour Creator, because I haven't done it in that, and because the first time I did Street View, it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. And so the first two Street View mysteries that people might remember from years and years ago were great, but then one sad day, Google updated the photos and they were obsolete. So if you're going to do it in Tour Creator, because then you're actually importing the 3D pictures in, and then you can make it so that the things are embedded into Tour Creator to click on. So instead of having a PDF open like I had and doing the walking around town on a split window, it's all in one window, and you can click to bring up the audio, click to bring up, I don't think you can bring up text, but you can bring up a photo of some text. Mm-hmm. So I will probably do that. But if you were doing it, I'd start straight away, get to grips with Google Tour Creator, get really good at that, and start with just maybe just a tour, take the students round a French town. You don't have to have a story. But French towns, there's something strange about them. The first one we had, a little boy hiding behind the bins. Do you remember that at the end? Mm-hmm. And then the other one we had, a car about to disappear into the river. So they just lent themselves to stories. Also, in one of them, someone had obviously taken it upon themselves to follow the Google Street camera car around with a big white van. So everywhere you went, there was a big white van following you. And that was one of the moments where at the end, when they've got all the clues, the teacher directs them to go down to the river and land on the bridge. And then you turn around and the van's behind you, and children screamed. They screamed out loud when they turned around and saw the van. And then they saw the car almost falling into the river, the same car that we found back in town. That story was all based around. So just go around some French towns and find some weird stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to make sense. So it's the students will have to pick all the links together.
Finding idiosyncratic elements. Have you done one in Spanish?
Just very, very quickly, because we didn't actually clap and say thank you, and I can see lots of people saying thank you. No, it's nobody's fault. Almost just so that you can acknowledge, Vincent, that there are loads of people saying thank you, and then we could all clap hands. Say thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, sorry to be so authoritarian and interrupt.
No, that's fine. It's fine.
Carry on as you were.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, so we've.
No, I haven't done one in Spanish.
How long did it take? Yeah, so are you planning on doing one for Spanish? I know this is like the typical question, isn't it, of language teachers. This is a lovely resource, but does it come in my target language, type thing?
Maybe.
Okay, we've got a maybe.
Probably Mexico rather than Spain, but yeah.
Right. So, okay. Annalise has asked about how did the box activity work? Maybe. Well, I think because it's being recorded, I'm sure that Annalise can watch that again.
But how do you make that? The one where you drag the boxes?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
The trick to that is if you make a text box first, before you do the big coloured box, that will then drag behind it because it was created first. So make lots first, and then the ones you want to appear in front, do them later.
Or change the order as well, presumably.
You can do a lot of right-clicking to centre back, centre front, but it's an easy way to do it. Or just go on my TES website, download it, and change it to your own purposes.
Perfect, thank you. And we've got a question from Catherine. Where can I find some advice about making writing or speaking frames for primary school children? You could just adapt what you've done, presumably, but just simplify it, would you say?
Yeah, when we have primary school children in, we have something with I like, I love, I prefer, and then it goes something like cake, pasta, hamburgers, and then with olives, marshmallows, so you're just making sentences that go, I like spaghetti with marshmallows, I don't like hamburgers with gherkins. That's actually quite normal, but you can, simplify it down. But, people are doing in primary what we've always done in Key Stage 3. So just have a look. in the links when it goes up, the most basic ones are on the old ALL London website from a talk I did in 2006, Helen, maybe. And they're French, Spanish and German, simple writing frames on there that you can adapt to your own topic.
That's fantastic. Lovely. Well, those are all the questions, Vincent. I'd just like to say personally, I really enjoyed that talk. That was really fantastic. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody when I say that. And thanks ever so much for your dedication to ALL and coming on and speaking. And of course, the bit at the end, the tech bit, did keep me very happy. But it was just amazing to see how you're using quicker conversations, because I would imagine a lot of people have never heard of that before. What a great way of practicing speaking remotely. I thought it was inspirational, so well done.
With a small number of students. I wouldn't want to set it up for a whole class, and there are security issues. You can give one conversation to a whole bunch of students, but then you don't know who said what or if anyone said anything naughty.
Yeah.
And people who use Flipgrid are probably just going, well, just use Flipgrid. But I like the informality. I send out that thing, they get a message from me, and then they record themselves. And it's that spontaneity. It's almost as if it was in class. It's not record a presentation of yourself. It's respond to this. Now and say it again, but longer. Okay, so it's worked.
So as you said, the physics teacher seems to be very responsive. So he's already talking about bringing in moderation options as well. So that's something else we can look forward to, but that's great. Lovely. Helen, did you want to say anything else to wrap up? Or?
Well, just to wrap up, thanks ever so much again, Vincent. Thank you ever so much for everybody for coming as well. Just be aware that there are some people out there who are not very happy that they couldn't get in, and I'm really, really sorry that that's the case. We have a situation where, this is done on a voluntary basis. Normally, we just let anybody sign up, obviously, and we don't do it so that it's
all recorded. It's all recorded.
So. Our experience normally is that people sign up, and normally you get about half the number of people who sign up. So that's how we do it. So in future, just to know that if you're really, really keen, come along. Yes, it's all recorded. So, but thank you, as I always say as well, Joe, thank you so much as well for having all of these contacts as well. I feel I do share a bit the contact with Vincent because we go back a long way. But, we've just had a stellar cast, haven't we, over these past few weeks? And we've got many more to come as well. So this coming Thursday...
We've got Samantha Broom talking about Google Classroom and Google Docs and Google Tools. So, and if you don't know, she's got a Google Classroom for MFL Teachers Facebook group, which has only been around for about a week, and it's already got 1,000 or nearly 1,000 members, I think. So, it's really good. There's for obvious reasons, it's very good. So yeah, we're delighted that Samantha is talking on Thursday.
And I think that will really complement what we've been doing, because I think on the Microsoft platform now we've had several talks which have been very comprehensive and have really covered it. And from reading what Samantha's going to do, she's going to do the same, of really from a manager's point of view, just go through all the things which the G Suite can offer. So no, it looks as if it's going to be really good as well.
Definitely. So we'll see everyone on Thursday.
Okay, thank you ever so much, everybody. I'll stop the recording now. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.